All right, the time now is 8:45. The stock market rolling out of the gate in negative territory today. The Dow has actually gained back a little bit of the early loss. It was more than 400 points down. Right now at 38,480. So what's going on? Some thoughts from Ernie Burns at Burns Estate Planning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
You know, one quick point is I read an article a couple weeks ago that when the Dow hit 20,000 and 30,000, it just roared right by them. This time it kind of peaked over 40,000 and then retreated.
And right now it's just opportunities in the market. I stated at the beginning of the year we're going to have a very positive year in the market. I still stand by that. These are just buying opportunities in the market. So don't scare it off. Just be very specific how you're investing.
And generally, as we've talked about in an election year, regardless of which party has the White House, there's a lot of push toward.
The last 16 elections, so before we were born, there's never been a negative year during an election year. That tells you anything. So how much steering are they actually creating?
That was about the time I was born, but we're not going there. All right, let's shift gears a little bit because, you know, there may be people, Ernie, who feel like they're missing out on some of the opportunities. You advise a second opinion.
Yeah, think about it this way. If you've always invested as you always have, and think about this analogy. If you were saying that you need a heart transplant, your doctor says you need a heart transplant, you're going to get a second opinion. Same thing as a retirement account. You want to make sure that you have enough money in retirement. Can I afford to retire? How do I pay these debts off? There's a lot of technical questions that have to be answered before you retire to make sure you can stay comfortably retired.
Yeah, I know you've talked about one of the key mistakes people make as they're getting close to retirement is they still continue to keep that credit card going and maybe buy a car, a second car. Maybe they didn't need that. You have to watch the debt.
You got to watch the debt. But just make sure that you sit down with a retirement advisory firm that does this for a living. Nothing but this, because if you're trying to basically live off credit cards and you think that's just part of my income, I'm just paying the minimums, that's not going to really create a great retirement for you.
So in terms of the actual practical information you're getting from, you know, going to a second doctor, if you will, a second opinion, what are you looking for?
We're looking at what income do you need in retirement? Is it sufficient? Can I actually tell you at the end of that entity you can afford to retire or not? Because sometimes if they tell people you can't afford to retire yet. You know, if you come in with $1 million, sounds like a lot of money, but if you want $100,000 a year income, that's not going to produce that type of return for 10 years, well, for 30 years straight.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might be surprised, you know, $1 million, that just forever, that was a lot, you were rich.
Yeah.
And not everybody has $1 million by any stretch, but at the same time, it's not, you know, you're not vacationing on the European beaches every summer either.
That's right. It all depends on what your income needed every month is. If you only need $5,000 a month, $1 million would be fine. But if you need $10,000 plus every month, it's not sufficient. So it depends what your spending limits are, and can you live by those limits?
Gotcha. So for somebody who's getting close to retirement, what's your advice?
Sit down with a retirement advisory firm that specializes in it, because we're going to basically look at not only bring your statements in and what type of debt you have, but also what income do you need in retirement, like we were talking about, and also what you're creating for the future, and in a sense of what type of investments do you need to make sure that you're growing those investments. Because look at inflation. Inflation set in really over the last 2 years. It's been around averaging 7%. Your income is going to get eaten up in about 7 years if you don't have a proper plan.
That's a whole other segment. Ernie Burns, thanks.
Yeah.